Hello, I am science fiction, fantasy, horror, and middle grade author Adam Troy Castro. Like the rest of you, I am stuck at home with social distancing, doing my part. I think those of you who are doing the same are heroes. I know it is difficult, and I know it is very, very important. We all want to save lives. We want to make this as small of an impact on the rest of society as we possibly can. Books, of course, are a great help in this. Reading is a great help in this. And as with many writers, I am providing some of my stories as YouTube videos to make it a little bit easier for those of you paying attention to stave off the boredom. And so I have a very short story here, a very old one, called, what is it called? It is called Trouble with Eyeballs. Just a few minutes long. I hope you enjoy it. When Harold was a boy, his mother constantly told him one thing over and over again: that he should put down that stick because he might put his eye out. By the time he became a man, he was so phobic that he avoided picking up anything at all, pointed, sharp, or otherwise, which he handled until the morning he woke up to discover that his problems had just multiplied by exactly 50%, in the form of an additional eyeball to worry about. It was right above his collarbone. It protruded slightly, and when he closed the eyes he was born with, he found out that he could still see with it. It was an eye, like any other eye, except that it was on his chest. Well, when the panic wore off, he decided that as long as it wasn't actually causing him any trouble, he'd just have to keep his shirt collar closed in public and live with it. That lasted until he found another eye blinking at him from the heel of his right foot. Soon, eyeballs started popping out all over his body, sometimes at the rate of 4 or 5 a day. He took to wearing gloves, and then a cervical collar, and then a wide-brimmed hat, and then very, very large dark glasses, which he never took off even at night. He began to walk with his legs wide apart, with his arms an unnatural distance from his body. He sat down rarely, and only with an expression of extreme pain. Before long, he had to sell everything he owned and move to a remote cabin in the upstate woods, 20 miles from his nearest neighbor. He was still shaped like a human being, but he no longer possessed even a single sliver of normal human skin. It had all been taken over by eyes. Big, bulging, bloodshot eyes. Hundreds of them. They were on his knees and in his armpits and on his elbows and between his fingers and at the tips of his fingers and on his buttocks and between his buttocks and on his ears and between his ears. Behind his ears, excuse me. And on his toes and between his toes and on his tongue. And on the roof of his mouth and in places that he hoped that they'd have the decency to stay out of. They even doubled up in some places, sprouting from the eyelids covering other eyes, so that great bunches of them hung from his body like grapes. They covered every square inch of him, and they looked out upon the world with a bone-chilling weariness that had shocked him the last time he'd seen it in his last, now discarded mirror. And then, late in the year, when he had lost all hope of ever finding out why this had happened to him, he was awakened by a tremendous crackling noise from all directions at once. He staggered out the front door of his cabin and saw a vast wasteland filled with dark, forbidding objects he only belatedly recognized as trees. It was hard to see them as trees because they'd lost all their leaves and all their branches in a single moment. Every single tree in sight, and that was quite a few since he now possessed 360-degree vision, was just a straight black pillar stabbing at the sky like a dagger. It took him a few seconds to register that the branches weren't exactly gone. They had all fallen off. They littered the ground by the millions. and they were all approaching him. Moving with a will of their own, they inched across the ground, breaking the still smaller pieces on the way. The secondary branches snapped away from the primary ones. The twigs snapped away from them. The ones large enough to qualify as lumber sawed themselves in half, and then into quarters, and finally into eighths. And though they all seemed in an inordinate hurry to meet him, there was something clearly reverent about their approach. His stomach sank as he finally understood. He was Harold, the god of the sharp sticks. The end. Stay well and healthy, everyone.